Welcome to part 2 of this book I was reading, Social Alchemist in the 21st Century, by a Mystery School initiate, Kabbalah practitioner, part of the Universal Kabbalah Network, co-founder, founder of Quantum Leap Alchemy. I've been sharing this with you because I have been trying to show that in these writings of hers, she speaks of real alchemy as being essentially socially engineering society. And as I've been reading and you've been hearing that, she talks about this alchemical process of, changing society, whatever, from one of individualism and separation into one of integration and connection, and and I pointed out that this is nothing more than the typical socialist collectivist jargon that you can read in other humanist socialist literature and whatever. But okay, so I'm on page 31 of this book. Quote, without the conscious and consistent involvement of the alchemist, the fermentation stage can be a long process. Often, this stage has been likened to the long, dark night of the soul, when experienced in the context of personal alchemy. The only way to speed it up is through various initiatory and vision-questing processes that come from the ancient mystery schools and shaman traditions. It is essential that we loosen the bonds and set the spirit free. They guide us forward towards the higher vision, a vision that must go beyond the mundane, beyond the desires of the ego. How do you know when the fermentation stage is done? During laboratory alchemy, the end of this stage is indicated by a rainbow-colored film that forms on the surface of the ferment. This colorful film is called the peacock's tail. In the metamorphosis of the caterpillar to the butterfly, this would be when the wing structures in all their magnificent beauty become recognizable within the cocoon. It is where the new structure of what we are transforming into is no longer just a vision, but can actually be recognized as an emergent structure amidst the chaotic soup. New life is born out of the ferment. It is the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. We see the light, or come up with something really innovative. A whole new epiphany or revelation comes through. And the final pieces needed for the new structure to finally gel come into place. And I pointed out in the last video how this new structure she's talking about, this new structure we are transforming into is nothing more than the New World Order. It's what the Great Reset is all about. It's what this chaos going on during 2020 and continuing is all about. So yeah, this is the glorious moment where the lights turn on, the engines start to rev again, and excitement bubbles up, signaling that the fermentation and dark stages are done. From here on there are no more impurities per se. Everything that remains is essential, and the work moves on towards refinement and elevation. Eventually, as everything starts to align around this new structure, the butterfly emerges from the alchemical soup and breaks out of the chrysalis. Even here, the alchemical process is not complete, though. The struggle is to get out of the cocoon. The struggle to get out of the cocoon is an important part of the strengthening of the butterfly's wings so that it can be strong. If we were to assist the butterfly out of its cocoon before it was able to do it on its own, then that butterfly would not be able to take flight. As the butterfly finally emerges out of the chrysalis, it is wet and groggy, and thus spends its first few hours of freedom drying its wings and resting a bit before it can take to flight. This stage of the butterfly's metamorphosis can be compared to the alchemical stage of distillation. It is a stage of reordering and refinement. In laboratory alchemy, to distill something means to take what emerges out of the ferment, dissolve it again into watery solution, and then boil it so that it evaporates into air. Still containing the vapor within our distillation apparatus, the evaporated essence is dispersed to the invisible realms, where it can interact with more subtle energy influences. This is the stage where we work to harness the subtle energies and infuse consciousness into our substance. After evaporating or elevating to higher realms and capturing spirit energy or consciousness, we then recondense back into solution to anchor these subtle energies back into tangible form. In distillation, we go through several cycles of this refinement process, each cycle infusing more and more spirit essence into the physical, uniting the powers of above and below, until the concentration of spirit energy into the physical becomes palpable and takes on a magnetic appeal to all who encounter it. In a personal or group alchemy, distillation is usually done through a series of meditative processes to clear the mind. This helps us to get past the chatter of the lower mind and into accessing the true innovation and creativity of universal mind. And remember that since she's an initiate of these secret occult societies, the mystery schools, etc., remember that she's going to speak in an esoteric manner, which is what you're hearing right now. So it's important to keep in mind, right, that, to read between the lines a lot of what you're hearing and not obviously take so, serious so literal. All you have to really know is that she's clearly talking about, in proper context of what she was talking about with the new structure, that this is talking about the destruction of the old world order and the rising of the new out of the ashes of the old, like the phoenix. Okay, but anyways, amazing things come from successful completion of the distillation stage. Here again, it takes patience, stick-to-it-ness, and discipline to keep it going through the many cycles of refinement and elevation. It is in this stage, though, where the real power of alchemy becomes evident. No longer are we just treating things at a base physical level. Here we are treating all levels of our experiment, from the physical to the spiritual, and gaining access to extraordinary powers that can infuse the physical and lift it to a supernatural status. Here we are uniting the whole universe and all its subtle energies with our microcosm. Finally, having victoriously emerged from the cocoon and crystallized its new form into a thing of strength and beauty, the butterfly is ready to take flight and live a glorious existence, flying freely in the air, drinking the nectar of flowers and bringing beauty to the world. Like the phoenix that rises from its own ashes, the butterfly has risen from the alchemical soup formed by the death of the caterpillar. This is the final alchemical stage of coagulation. Here, all of the purified, elevated, consciousness-infused substance has crystallized it into a final perfected form. In this perfected form, all opposites are balanced and united into one whole. Sometimes we must go through the first 6 stages again before we can even get to a real 7th stage of coagulation, the final perfected product. The number of times we must go through this process before succeeding in the perfection of the art depends on how well we do the job the first time, through. Eventually we come to that perfect result. That is the promise of alchemy, the incorruptible, all-powerful, unstoppable philosopher's stone that has the power to turn anything it touches into gold. This process may be considered an apt depiction of what we are going through right now in our current social metamorphosis. There is a portion of the population out there, and I imagine that those of you who are reading this book are likely among them, that are playing the part of the imaginal cells of humankind. Because many of her readers are, as I said before, are themselves initiates. That's what she meant when I talked about in the last video, what she meant by imaginal cells. And obviously these are, agents and other initiates that are part of doing, quote-unquote, the great work. But anyways, what are the demographics of people that are driving the change? who are the ones holding a new vision for a new society that is going to be remarkably different from the old structure and whose time has come. So again, you have another secret society initiate and from the horse's own mouth talking about a new society coming out from the old, new world order. So more proof and more evidence. Who will drive our metamorphosis forward until we can take flight and be glorious. Chapter 4, The Game Changers. There are two primary groups that research has identified as comprising the imaginal cells in the body of humanity. They hold within them a new vision, a new blueprint, and a new way of being. These two groups have been forecasted to be the game changers of our times, and they are already living up to this name. The Millennials. The first group is the Millennials, or the Net Generation. The Net Generation is primarily composed of people born after 1981, as well as some of the computer techies born in the 1970s who grew up with the internet. These youth are fueling many of the changes that we are experiencing in our world today. New technologies, new ways of connecting, social networking, new media methods, and so forth. Much has been published about the Net Generation, or the Millennials, especially in the following recommend books: Growing Up Digital and Grown Up Digital by Dan Tapscott, as well as Millennials Rising by Neil Howe and William Strauss. The Millennials are the creators of Facebook, Twitter, Google, YouTube, various other new social media methods of connecting and socializing. The viral marketing way of spreading the word. They are the ones who go directly to the internet because they know that at the click of a button they can get whatever information they want. They don't have to go through mainstream media as their only source for news and information about what's going on. Having a degree of skepticism about the mainstream media in general, they tend to do their own research to find out, figure out, and decide for themselves what they think is really happening. At the same time, many of them struggled with the educational system growing up because it didn't suit their needs or new ways of thinking and interacting, so they become very disillusioned by the system. Some examples of the kind of success young Net Generation entrepreneurs have achieved include Larry Page and Sergey Brin, who co-founded Google in 1998 while in graduate school at Stanford University. Google rapidly grew to a multinational corporation, and by 2011, both Page and Brin had achieved a personal net worth of $16.7 billion each. Mark Zuckerberg, of course we all know who he is, who at 20 years of age founded Facebook in 2004 and subsequently left his undergraduate schooling at Harvard to start up the company. By 2011, Facebook was receiving more web traffic than Google and bringing in $1 billion worth in annual revenues, while Mark Zuckerberg's personal net worth reached $17.5 billion. Steve Chen and Chad Hurley and Jod Karim, who in 2005 co-founded YouTube after having worked together as young employees at PayPal. About a year and a half later, these inventors in their mid to late 20s sold their company to Google for $1.65 billion. YouTube has since revolutionized the marketing and media industries, and some say it may eventually lead to the demise of the TV industry. And, YouTube, Google, and Facebook all do nothing but censor the truth. So I find the irony that these guys that she talks about that were motivated with starting these social network companies, organizations, because they got tired of, the controlled media and the controlled educational system in our modern society. Eventually, these companies themselves have become just as bad, just as oppressive, just as, censoring the truth, not letting people have a voice, unless it's, far left. Anyways, okay. The millennials seek out instant gratification because that is what they come to expect growing up digital. They want to have fun now, not later. They want to be connected now, and they want to have balance, creative outlets, and diversity in their life. As a result of growing up digital, their minds also work differently. They are extremely gifted and creative in learning how to tap into all the technologies that are available today to make things happen faster, because they know they can do things differently. They tend to rebel against the idea of being a slave to the system with all of its emphasis on linear left-brain thinking and doing. This combination of their drive for instant gratification and their new ways of thinking has led them to create some amazing innovations that are opening up a quicker path to success for everyone. The millennials are daring to do it differently because they hold within them a truly new vision for how the world could be. The cultural creatives. The other demographic of people forming the human imaginal cells have been termed by researcher Paul Ray as the cultural creatives. While less well known than the millennials, by 2010, this group was estimated to account for as much as 30% of the populations of first world countries. The interesting thing about this group, however, is that they are harder to identify because they are not defined by the typical demographic categories such as age, range, gender, country, cultural background, income bracket, etc. Rather, what is unique about this group and what does define them is that they are aligning around a new value base. They mark the emergence of a new set of values pertaining to life in the modern world that they believe our society and its systems should be based on. This new value-based demographic has been slowly emerging since about the 1960s and has continued to grow. Studies by Paul Ray report that in the 1960s, only about 2% of the population actually fit into this demographic. By 2010, it had grown to upwards of 30% of the population in first world countries, including the USA, Australia, Japan, and the EU. The size of this growing demographic continues to increase across the world. What are some of the values that define the cultural creatives? Exploring this will give us some insights into the core of the new blueprint that is taking hold and that will set the directions for what kind of butterfly humanity will become. According to Paul Ray's surveys, those values include such things as authenticity, engaged action, walking the talk, transparency, whole process learning, seeing the world as interwoven and interconnected. That's another word that I was talking to you about in my last video. That's another socialist New World Order word that they use, that humanity has become interconnected, global, the global society. Community and cooperation. Community and cooperation. That's the what this whole pandemic and everything is training this country to be more like. It's about community and cooperation with the face masks and the lockdowns, not about your individual right to, want to keep your regular face and walk around everywhere without being hassled to put something over your face. So, yep. Integrated modern lifestyle. Pro-technology, altruism, idealism, activism, having a global worldview and perspective. Stewardship, being ecologically and environmentally responsible. Gender equality and ethnic equality. Optimism towards the future, self-actualization and spirituality, but not as strong of a religious emphasis. Active involvement in creating a better way of life. So these are just more New World Order type people that want to help bring that about. Cultural creatives mark a new value base that has emerged to create a better world. These characteristics that are identified as defining the cultural creatives are generally shared by many millennials. As a result, the size of this cultural creatives demographic will continue to grow. As more of the younger generations are coming in and becoming the workers and leaders of tomorrow, this new value base will eventually take over to guide the transformation of our society. The future lies in the hands of those who have an optimistic vision for it. And these two groups, the cultural creatives and the millennials, certainly fit that description. They are the people who will adapt and learn to implement new technologies and new systems. They are becoming the game changers of our time. self-organizing through social media. The imaginal cells of the human race are not only increasing in numbers, but they are now self-organizing as well. Self-organizing systems with many interrelating parts have been studied in many branches of science and have been observed to produce what are known as emergent phenomena, in a similar way to how the butterfly structure begins to emerge from the alchemical soup of the old dissolving caterpillar. So too do various other high-order structures emerge from seeming chaos. These emerging groups are finding their voice and their strength. Social media campaigns have been a huge factor in their ability to unite, coordinate, and have as much impact as they are having. This is primarily thanks to the net generation. The people of this demographic know how to maximize the use of new technologies to support their cause. This is one of the things that helped make movements such as Barack Obama's presidential campaign in 2008, the political influence of MoveOn.org, the Egyptian Revolution, and Arab Spring of 2011, Occupy Wall Street, the Truth documentary movement, that's interesting, and many others built up to so much attention, support, and momentum. Gone are the days of relying on a few big media companies as the sole sources of news and information. Social media is quickly taking over, and the net generation especially prefers to go straight to the free information sources on YouTube, internet searches, various independent media channels that they follow. The introduction of social media has radically changed how information is distributed and how fast it spreads, like wildfire sometimes. As a result, the people have found a tool that empowers them to share facts, data, and perspectives far easier than ever before. It has also provided a means to rally for action and support for various grassroots and mainstream causes. So long as the internet remains relatively free and uncensored, this tool can continue to be used by the people to self-organize and effect social change. And unfortunately, I guess this was just probably 7 years ago or something, or 8 years ago. Now it is not free, and it is heavily censored now. And but the causes that she's talking about, they still allow those causes to be, freely talked about on Google and YouTube. It's the old world order type groups, as they like to call us. It's the conservatives, many of them, the people who are against the World Health Organization and its agenda for the Great Reset. Those are the ones that are being censored and silenced. So gone is now the internet that used to be free and uncensored. It's pretty sad. I used to like YouTube. I used to love the internet. And now it's like, since Google and YouTube have taken over, and now you don't have, I have to be careful what I say here without getting a second strike. But anyways, she has a chapter 5 here. Where are we in our alchemical process? At this point you may be wondering, where are we now in the change process? It is clear to me that as of 2012, modern civilization is somewhere in the middle of the chrysalis phase, between the caterpillar dissolving and a butterfly being formed. She has a little illustration here. But anyways, humanity is midway through the process of dissolving the old systems and forming better ones. We entered into the current alchemical cycle around the turn of the new millennium. The first death in the calcination stage came with the dot-com bubble burst in 1999, followed by the Financial Modernization Act signed by Clinton into law that deregulated the banking industry. Then in 2001, the world reeled from the shock of the infamous 9/11 tragedy, which instigated the Bush administration to put into effect the Patriot Act in the Department of Homeland Security, as well as to declare war on terrorists. While this may have protected USA borders from further terrorist acts, it also stripped American citizens of many unalienable rights and privacy. The calcination continued with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, which led to further death, as well as skyrocketing national debts. While most of these calcinations were instigated by people and certain powers that be, they were not likely made with conscious intent for positive transformation. In a similar way, the caterpillar doesn't really make a decision to become a butterfly. Certain other forces instigate the transformation. Needless to say, these events, while tragic, served as catalysts that kicked off a more conscious movement for change. And I find that them saying shit like that over and over and over in their writings. Alice Bailey, her, even some stuff with Clymer and the various Rosicrucian orders. They claim that while these world wars, while all these things that cause worldwide death or chaos and despair, they'll say, well, while it's tragic, it's also needed, or because they serve as catalysts to bring in the new age, to help usher it in. So the dissolution stages came as emotions were stirred from the various deaths, losses, and tragedies. The people protested, but to not much avail, for their voices were drowned out by the mainstream media and political rhetoric. The system continued to dissolve as the real estate and credit bubbles burst, with the banks themselves facing bankruptcy. This debt, which had been unchecked since the Federal Financial Modernization Act of 1999, was then transferred to the people of the United States as the banks were bailed out under the Bush administration. More anger, more sadness, more disillusionment rose up amidst the people. Other countries also suffered as a result of wars and the failing global financial system of central banking. Fueled by emotion, disillusionment at the system, and dissatisfaction that comes from realizing the foundation upon which our system is built has become corrupted and is no longer supporting the whole, the people either rose up or sunk into dismay and depression. Disillusion tends to be a more introspective stage, providing an opportunity to reflect and dig deeper into what is at the root of the issues. It is one thing to be angry about things that are not working, but it is another thing to start going deeper into what is really at the source of this. What is the problem and what can we do about it? With the introduction of Facebook in 2004, YouTube in 2005, and Twitter in 2006, the scene started to shift and the people found a tool they could use to self-organize, express their voice, and find power in numbers. As the social media revolution gained momentum and self-organizing increased, we transitioned into the separation stage. The first obvious result of the new movements that emerged from the power of social networking came with the sweeping victory of Barack Obama during the 2008 election, making history as the first African American to take office as the President of the United States. This event was not just isolated to the USA, it was an event that captured the attention of people around the globe, who mostly cheered at the hope it brought them that change can happen. Regardless of Obama's actions in office since then, the energies of hope, conscious change, and power of the people were fueled from this historic event. Nothing changed, obviously, since Obama was just, again, another puppet. They used as a nice face to really usher it. I mean, they really ushered it in under him. And it got, yeah. As the separation stage continued, various groups of differing perspectives and agendas have continued to distinguish themselves from the rest. We have seen the emergence of the Tea Party movement, the Libertarian movement, the Occupy movement, the environmental and green movements, sustainability and alternative energy movements, and so forth. Documentary films now abound, revealing the once hidden truth about how flawed our systems really are. From politics, food industry, medicine, big pharma, to financial, to education, etc. They are lifting the veil on what is really going on and pointing out what flaws and impurities need to be rooted out and eliminated. The various movements are raising questions and opening up discussions to seek clarity on what do we really want our world to be? What don't we want to see happen anymore? Who can we trust? What solutions will work? And that's one of the reasons why, I was exposing a lot of the truth movement, because a lot of it is really just, it's a part of their agenda, not, everything, but that's why we have so many shills within it, I feel, is that this is just a part of the alchemical, their alchemical, transmutation or transformation of society. It it's a part of the plan to externalize the hierarchy. And, they point the chaos out that they start, point the fingers at themselves as they always do, but then what do they have to offer as a solution? Part of the Hegelian dialectic. It's part of the problem-reaction solution. What they had in mind the whole time, which is further, control of, it's like with the banking industry and all the stuff that fell apart with the 2008 financial crisis. The government came and bailed all these companies out and stuff. It was really the government, as a solution, to offer us a solution to salvation, seizing more control. More chaos, more control. So, the challenge we face with the separation stage is that the divisions between the different groups and perspectives on what are the best solutions are getting wider and starker. What happens as tensions continue to brew with this widening division of the different parts is that ultimately it reaches a breaking point. In laboratory alchemy, this may lead to a shattering of our alchemical vessel, which requires us to start over again. This shattering came at the beginning of 2011 with yet another round of calcinations taking place during the Egyptian Revolution, followed by the domino effects of the Arab Spring and Occupy movements. Millions of people from all races, genders, educational backgrounds, financial brackets, etc. flooded into the streets to protest and occupy together. The domino effect rapidly spread to becoming a worldwide event from Egypt to the Middle East to cities across America to London, Madrid, Berlin, Athens, Mumbai, Tokyo, various cities in Australia and many Asian countries as well. Below is an image of all the Occupy events scheduled around the world on October 15, 2011. Occupiers gathered in cities all around the world in a cry for our societal systems to change. The people were angry that a small group of the wealthy elite, coined as the 1%, have grown increasingly rich while the other 99% have been left behind. This belief seems to be shared by a lot of people across the political spectrum. It has nothing to do with the leftist or rightist or democratic or Republican or independent or any of that. People across the spectrum of political views agree that the system has gotten out of hand and that the divide of wealth is very disproportionate. Even billionaires like Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, and Sir Richard Branson, who count themselves among the 1%, are vocalizing that the system needs to change and become more fair to the masses. They might as well replace that word masses with slaves, because that is just a more polite term for it. You might as well be honest. We shouldn't be called the masses, we should be called the people. Or the masses or citizens. That's Marxist-Leninist language, talking about the people, the masses. And, everything about Bill Gates. Yeah, he wants to change things. He wants to further tighten the shackles around our ankles and wrists and control the population. Citizens of the world in over 1,500 cities worldwide joined the movement for the voice of the 99% to be heard saying, "Enough is enough! No more!" Nature may have added her own voice, pronouncing her discontent with our modern way of life. Could it be inferred that both the 2010 Gulf of Mexico oil spill disaster, as well as the massive March 2011 earthquake and tsunami that hit Japan, were nature's way of adding to the recalcination of modern man? These unfortunate events triggered huge amounts of toxins, crude oil, and radiation from nuclear waste to be released into the environment that will continue to cause problems for generations to come. Perhaps it was her way of waking the people up to the fact that these energy sources are not environmentally safe and produce tons of toxic waste, only adding to the impurities that must be cleaned up. Or, I'll add in, it might have been the Illuminati's way, not nature's way, of creating a chaotic situation so then they can come in as the saviors, bring in their Agenda 21 and the New World Order. That's what I say. It's probably the case with these recalcinations. Just like all the other calcinations, supposedly, that she's talking about. It's all chaos instigated, started, encouraged by these mystery school initiates and these people to help bring about the world situation that they want so they can bring their order out of chaos. So, and what was that movie? I don't know. I'm going to find that. But I think it was the movie Knowing. Don't quote me on that. But it was one with Nicolas Cage. Someone had shown me this years back. But they were showing how, this was like a predictive programming on the Gulf oil spill. And this came out like, I think, months prior. It was, I don't know exactly, but it was before the Gulf oil spill. And he showed a clip of him watching the television and seeing on the news this big Gulf oil spill, or something spilling in the ocean, some ocean. But it was exactly like how later on, after the movie came out, the Gulf oil spill. And that I should find that clip. But that clearly was like obviously giving probable cause and evidence that crude oil, that Gulf oil spill was another one of their schemes, one of their things that they did, false flags, to do just that, to supposedly wake us up, as she says here, waking us up to the fact that these energy sources are not environmentally safe. Well, what would that do? It would get more public support. Public support for, something needs to be done. The UN needs to come in and control these resources because it's not safe in the hands of irresponsible or greedy people. I know I'm rambling on, but I'll just keep reading. These events have made for a rather intense ride since the turn of the new millennium. The purification stages are always intense. Egos get burned, people get inflamed, systems break down. But if it weren't for these catalysts, we'd likely continue to go on with our inertia in the status quo and continue on our crash course for extinction, driving our world out of balance from greedy lifestyles and impure motives. Unfortunately, most people tend to cling to what was comfortable, even though they know it is not ideal or healthy. So unless something comes along that really shakes or burns us and makes us look at the underlying patterns of what's not working, then we'll continue to ignore the issues. And that explains why, they do the things that they do. Why they would instigate these crises, these traumatic events. She says it right here. Well, she doesn't say that, exactly word for word that, they're all behind it. But she, hints and suggests at it throughout this book. But anyways, now that the metamorphosis has begun, however, we can't cling to the old structure or way of life anymore, or the old world order. We are faced with the same dilemma that the dying caterpillar cells face. Either one, give up and dissolve into the chaos. Number two, cling to the old and fight a losing battle. Cling to the old world order and fight the new world order, and according to her, you'll lose. Or three, make a shift to an alternate way of being by repurposing and aligning with the new paradigm systems that are developing at increased momentum. In other words, accepting the new world order, conforming to it and its systems of enslavement. The shift comes as we more skillfully and intentionally push onwards through the remaining stages of the alchemical process. How do we move forward from here? The opportunity is here now to make a breakthrough to push our progression to the next level by stepping more consciously into this evolutionary process as alchemical change agents. So the question becomes, how do we successfully move forward in this process rather than continuing to get stuck in recycling through the pain of the first three stages? How do we move past the third stage of separation and into fourth stage of conjunction and beyond? The keys to getting past the separation stage that humanity has been getting stuck at are 1. Move beyond the emotional attachments, opinions, and negative emotions. trying to hang on. Sorry. 2. Be honest with ourselves and each other. Accomplishing these two things involves facing some of our own darkness as well as soul searching to get really clear about our core values. Let us first address point number 1 on how we can successfully break through by moving beyond the emotional energy. This includes the reactive emotions that drove us to finally speak out and say, no more. In the first place, the anger, the sadness, the dissatisfied emotions, the attachments to personal opinions, the projections that cause us to point the finger and blame others, yet not take any personal responsibility ourselves, and so on. These negative emotions, while a natural response to the calcinations, can continue to breed negativity and strife if we allow them to keep driving us. Thus far, with our societal addiction to drama, it appears we have remained stuck in the negative emotions and attachments. The disillusion stage is meant to discharge these emotions and wash them away so that we can move beyond them. The discharge comes from expressing the emotional energies so that it can be released to provide room for more clarity of thought and realization to come through. It is definitely important to have that freedom to express the upset, and it is also important to find constructive outlets rather than destructive ones that create negative feedback loops in order to truly move beyond the emotions. The E in the emotion stands for energy. Emotions are energy that needs to be in motion. In other words, emotions need to be actively moved through, creatively expressed, and constructively acted upon in order to be released and dissipated. If we suppress the emotions, then they turn inwards and become toxic or create disease. So let it be okay to express emotions, and let's work together to find creative and constructive modes of expressing these emotional energies. When we learn to harness the power of our emotions and direct the energy toward positive outlets, then we will truly find a motive force for creating positive change in our world. Face the truth. In addition to moving beyond the emotional attachments, key number 2 challenges us to face the truth and be honest with each other and ourselves. Usually this means letting go of our ego pride, righteousness, and self-centered viewpoint in order to see things from a different perspective. Only then will we be able to acknowledge our own shortcomings and the resulting limitations that our narrow perspectives create. Once we can acknowledge these downfalls, then we can accept and open up to the possibility that other perspectives might be able to help or show us a new alternative. Only with an open mind can we start to realize creative solutions that can get us out of the mess we've created. Telling ourselves the truth means recognizing the places where we too have been part of the problem. Philosophers and sages throughout the ages tell us that the world outside is simply a reflection of what is happening within each of us. Thus, we as individuals and as groups must also purify ourselves. It is not just those guys out there, it is also us in here. This awareness that we must take personal responsibility for the condition of our world and the changes we want to see in it is beautifully expressed by Gandhi's famous quote, "Be the change you want to see in the world," unquote. In alchemy, the alchemists and their experiments are not viewed as separate. Rather, they are intimately connected or entangled. Thus, any change that the alchemist wishes to see in their subject, they must first realize that change within themselves. Only then can they create that change in the outer world. If we want to create a golden society, we must each first attain gold within our own hearts, minds, and souls. Inner gold is the attainment of wisdom and the awakening our fully perfected potential. The true alchemical work thus starts within, and from there it moves out into the world. So the golden society is another wording for the golden age, the golden dawn. The golden age ruled by Saturn. So anyways, realize that even once we have separated the essential parts out from one another and identified what's what, those various parts that we are choosing to keep are still corruptible. Thus, we must take each of the individual parts through their own filtering and purification cycles again. The goal is to bring each part to a place where it has become really clear and distilled down to pure essence. For example, we ask within our own network, what within this group do we want to keep? What do we need to discard? What is working? What is not working? What behaviors are present in our group that are holding us back? Only as the different parts become purified separately can they then come back together again and find a harmony between the essential ingredients. Having no doubt we can accomplish far more together, working in harmony and cooperation, than we can divided and separate. Balancing and uniting the polar aspects that make up the whole is the task of a successful conjunction stage. As Nelson Mandela insightfully said, if you want to make peace with your enemy, you have to work with your enemy. Then he becomes your partner. Unquote. How do we know when the various parts have become purified enough to successfully move onwards towards conjunction? The sign we look for in alchemy is transparency. As everything is purified, it shifts from a murky mixture to a transparent one. No more hiding, no more manipulation or lies, no more impurities or murkiness. Transparency reveals the truth of things. When we are transparent, we are honest, open, straightforward, in integrity, walking the walk and with nothing to hide. When we can be transparent, we can meet differing perspectives from a much clearer place, without any emotional reaction or defensiveness. This opens the door to better communication. In order to get to that point, we ourselves have to face and accept the truth and acknowledge the limitations both within our lives and within the groups we associate with. With this acceptance, we can then proactively work to remedy the problems that we would otherwise try to hide or scapegoat. It is interesting to consider this concept of transparency in the context of today's society and how things have shifted since the introduction of the internet, social networking, and viral media. It has become much harder for the powers that be to pull the wool over people's eyes. The truth is becoming more apparent than ever before, as it is much easier to fact-check or get the inside scoop. Furthermore, our interconnected lifestyles and networked profiles and data have also made it harder for individuals to maintain privacy. Our own lives are becoming more transparent. This trend may be scary for some, but if we can successfully purify our lives and our systems, then the transparency levels we are moving into will be for the better. It will lead to a world that is more open and unified, for we will have nothing to hide. So she supports the surveillance, state and everything being tracked. It'll be for the better, and that's what they always promise. So where am I at now? Okay. Well, we're getting pretty far into it. But, okay. So, I just wanted to set this aside and finish this up with the number 3 video, I guess. It's almost finished. 59 to 74. And it gets more interesting, a little more interesting. So, this controlled opposition is a major part of the, their plan, the social engineering, getting people to accept the New World Order and everything, and the purpose of QAnon, we know, was to completely debunk the, they were mixing a lot of truth with lies, true stuff, conspiratorial stuff, mix it in with a lot of lies. The movement was able to get popular enough to where they could begin to the mainstream media and the politicians to capitalize on it, and capitalize on it. Zero in on the movement and sort of treat it like a dangerous group, to the point of where they tried to pass this House resolution bill, and by Representative Tom Malinowski. This is all the way back in the 25th of September of last year, condemning QAnon and rejecting the conspiracy theories it promotes. Whereas throughout history, conspiracy theories that falsely blame secret cabals or marginalized groups for society's ills have fueled prejudice, genocide, and acts of terrorism. Whereas QAnon is a movement promoting a collection of unfound conspiracy theories that have spread widely on the internet since 2017. QAnon initially alleged that prominent Americans are engaged in a secret plot to control the world, while using their power to exploit children, and has expanded to embrace virtually every popular conspiracy theory of the last several decades, from questioning the truth about the September 11th terrorist attacks to believing in alien landings to denying the safety of vaccines. Many QAnon followers express anti-Semitic views, and the Anti-Defamation League has said that the movement's central conspiracy theory includes anti-Semitic elements. So, the Federal Bureau of Investigation has assessed with high confidence that fringe political conspiracy theories, including QAnon, very likely motivate some domestic extremist, or wholly or in part to engage in criminal or violent activity. And that these conspiracy theories likely encourage the targeting of specific people, places, and organizations, increasing the likelihood of violence against these targets. And you can read this bill, it's on congress.gov, but, it kind of reminds me of their, controlling both sides, and the reason why they do that. But it's coming quick, and the storming of the Capitol really drilled in people's minds that, conspiracy theories, as they like to call them, even though there's no conspiracy theory anymore about the secret cabal out to bring in a new world order. It's all open. The president, current president, if you want to call him that, I don't call him my president anyways, has called for it numerous times as a part of the Council on Foreign Relations. So none of it's theory, it's all fact. But these PSYOP movements that they create, they paint a picture in the sheeple's minds that anyone who holds to conspiracy theories, because they don't want to research anything or look anything up, so they just know what their mainstream media feeds them and what their controlled education teaches them, that all conspiracy theorists are these crazy, dangerous people. Well, that's why these secret societies, a lot of them do lead these supposed truth movements, to radicalize us or to make us look, stupid, by mixing a lot of truth with lies, instigating stuff like what you've seen at the Capitol. And, and that's why the focus shouldn't be on the left versus the right only. We need to look at the big picture. We need to look at the secret societies who are playing both sides. And, we need to rely on facts. Like what I read here is thought-provoking evidence that confirms my supposed conspiracy theories. And, we just need to start spreading the truth. We don't have the time to be spreading speculative stuff that we can't really prove is true or not. Like a lot of people were doing before the inauguration. They were, pushing a lot of bullshit concerning Biden and concerning Trump. All that fell apart after the inauguration. Many of the people who used to hold to the QAnon fled the movement. And I had heard that the people who created the movement were just doing it to make a lot of money and just pretty much banded it all together themselves. But there are still fringe group who still, believe in it. Guess, I don't know, but yeah, we need to, because they're playing us big time. We need to wake up from that. I don't need to tell a lot of you guys who watch this channel that. You guys are pretty well aware of it yourself, but You know, this is a platform where I can still feel like, to some degree, I can get on and talk about things that I usually have a hard time talking about in public with people. Try to talk to people at work about this stuff. I give names, I give organizations, I give sources, and you know, they just need to clean their ears out, or they just goes right over their head. They have no idea. They have no freaking clue how our world's a stage. Well, thank you for watching this second video, part 3 coming up, and she does say more very interesting things in that book, so please watch that one too. I'll add some more stuff to that one as well. Take care. Have a good night.